Mass Effect Andromeda is well known for being, well, a bit of a mess. After some 5 years in development, it released 2 lukewarm reviews and resulted in the creation of some dank memes. But now, we finally know exactly why Mass Effect Andromeda was such a disaster.
We could have given you the short version, but there's a lot of details in here that just explain a lot of things about Mass Effect Andromeda, so this is going to be a long-ass video. But it's worth it. Mass Effect Andromeda was a disappointment. There's not many that would disagree with that. If you like the game, hey, more power to you, but I bet it's not the game that you thought or hoped you were getting. It arrived on the PC, PS4 and Xbox One back in March, and it was met with about as much enthusiasm as a ship full of gun-towing, rubber-faced foreign colonists arriving in the Andromeda galaxy. It was panned, it was mocked, memed, gifted and derided. It was, in short, a massive disappointment, a black mark on Bioware's record and a failure in the eyes of many series fans like myself. And now, thanks to a pretty extensive investigation by Kotaku, we know exactly why.
Mass Effect Andromeda's 5-year development timeline was a disaster. The short version is this: the Frostbite engine is no good for RPGs, the project was rudderless for its first few years, and most of the product we have today was stitched together in the last 18 months. The game was billed as a Mass Effect game where exploration was king. Bioware Montreal were the lead development team on the project because Bioware Edmonton, the original Mass Effect studio, were hard at work on their new IP, codenamed Dylan, because their aim is to make the Bob Dylan of video games. Previously a support team, this was Bioware Montreal's shot at the big time, and they set out to create an ambitious sci-fi epic that would live up to the series' legacy.
So the game that they wanted it to be sounds pretty fair enough to me, and the initial premise for the game that they had sounds good. It's just a shame that they didn't meet that.
Yeah, I think to be a good exploration game, you have to discover some awesome shit. What they meant by exploration was driving around in the Nomad for God knows how long. I got bored. I got really bored with that. That's not exciting to me. Maybe they just lost like the point. We do have to mention the Bob Dylan of games, though. I mean, what could that be? The Bob Dylan of video games.
I don't know why Bob Dylan though. I don't know why Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan's awesome.
Yeah, but it's like a song. The Bob Dylan of video games would be like, stick with me, Peter Molyneux or someone who makes video games. Do you know what I mean? It's the
person,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
That's what I think. It's like Bob Dylan is the guy who makes the songs.
You know, Bob Dylan is to the music industry what this game will be to. I know what you're saying though. I know what you're saying. But in my mind, it all makes sense.
It's a stupid comparison, basically. The game entered pre-production in 2013, and Bioware played with the idea of using procedural generation to make the game's many planets, which kind of excited the team. One member told Kotaku, "No Man's Sky with Bioware graphics and story, that sounds amazing." Yeah, that does sound amazing, but that's not what we got. Gerard Leani was hired as the game's director, and he decided the narrative would be centered around colonists searching for a new world in case Commander Shepard failed to stop the Reaper attack in the original trilogy.
Bioware Montreal created prototypes for the game in the first 2 years, but there were numerous bumps in the road. Teams complained they were perpetually understaffed. The narrative team struggled to incorporate a story into a procedurally generated game, and level designers thought that the procedural generation wasn't making high quality worlds, and no one was able to come up with a solution.
Should have hired Hello Games. I bet it would have been better. Rather than 2 studios making 2 shit games, Hello Games should have helped make Andromeda a procedural generation thing. Might have been a good game.
Yeah. I doubt it. Bioware also ran into issues with the Frostbite engine, EA's in-house development tool, which was incapable of performing the basic functions required in an RPG. It struggled with providing an inventory and managing party members. The Dragon Age Inquisition team lent a hand in the development of the RPG mechanics, but Bioware Montreal still had to develop an animation system from scratch. One developer said, "It's been painful. The pain started with Dragon Age Inquisition and continued with Andromeda as well."
Bioware Montreal staff described the creative phase in 2013 as one of the best years of their professional careers, but the following year was actually one of the worst. Office politics started to appear, and conflicts between the Bioware Edmonton and Bioware Montreal studios began to emerge. The Edmonton studio thought Andromeda was floundering and didn't have a strong enough vision, whereas the Montreal studio believed that Edmonton were trying to sabotage them, even poaching ideas for Project Dylan, a game that intends to be the Bob Dylan of video games. At least a dozen staff left Bioware Montreal, including Andromeda's original director, Gerard Layani, but their positions weren't refilled.
This sounds like a bit of a mess. Like two studios, one which originally had the franchise, passed the gauntlet onto a new franchise, into a new studio, and they're interfering in each other's. It just sounds like a complete. Like,
doesn't sound healthy, does it? It doesn't sound like a healthy creative environment. You know, if you're busy working on the Bob Dylan of video games, what are you doing poking into other people's business to start with? If you read the Kotaku interview in full, there'll be a link in the description. Read it. It sounds like the Edmonton studio were like, this is our thing. We are the, you know, we make the great games. You guys are just helping us out. And then Montreal sound like they're a little bit paranoid and they're a little bit worried that Edmonton are, you know, they have ill intentions for some reason. So it just overall wasn't a very healthy environment.
Facing a bit of a crisis, EA brought in longtime Mass Effect writer Mac Walters to serve as Andromeda's new creative director, which resulted in a huge shift in the game's vision. Some of the game's mechanics were shaping up quite nicely, combat was fast and fluid, and the Nomad buggy felt great to drive. But the key problem was the procedurally generated worlds were just dull. The procedural generation was finally ditched at the end of 2015, less than 18 months from release. As deadlines approached, several mechanics had to be cut as well, including spaceflight, while the story, levels and cinematics were still way behind schedule. Then came the crunch, a period where developers work almost non-stop to finish a game on time. But development was handled by the 3 Bioware teams and additional outsourcing was done to development studios in Vancouver and South Africa, which meant even the most basic tasks could take hours to finish. Most of the writing in the game, the dialogue and so on, was done in the last 18 months.
So this just kind of sounds like pure chaos. I mean, when you've got people all over the world basically working on the same project, things are just going to get delayed. But even, you know, the fact that they were saying basic things that they needed doing, like, it just took forever because the people they were communicating with were on the other side of the world in different time zones and stuff. They're all stressed and exhausted, like, you know, working crunch period for 18 months. And having been working on the game for years previously to that as well.
The main reasons obviously were that the fact they had a deadline and they were putting in people under a lot of pressure to get certain aspects of the game finished by a certain date, and, you know, 18 months before the end, they've still got loads of shit to do. And also the fact that they've got so many different departments weighing in with their ideas and trying to help out, but, you know, that can never be the most productive of environments where you've got multiple people with multiple ideas overlapping in different places on the planet, and it's not going to be easy, is it?
It wasn't actually until Mac Walters came on board that Andromeda had truly started to take shape, but the game was still plagued with problems. One developer said, we'd put something together and it's been bug tested and signed off and approved. We'd say, okay, we can move on from that to the next thing, and while our backs were turned, what we just put together falls apart. As for the animation, it was originally quite impressive, but the team struggled to implement the handcrafted facial animations into the engine itself. They couldn't settle on which animation software to use, so when they finally did end up using Maya instead of 3D Studio, it rendered most of their work obsolete because it was originally made using another software. The result was, well, you guys know by now.
Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
Once the team finally had a working build, they sent it out to mock reviewers, and they were relieved to hear that they were enjoying the game, and Andromeda was estimated to hit between 80 and 85 on Metacritic. In reality, once the game had launched and the memes were made, Andromeda's score settled on 70 for the PS4 version, a whole 10 points lower than what was projected. The mixed reception resulted in the Mass Effect series being put on hold for the foreseeable future, and Bioware Montreal was once again downgraded to be a support team. EA also moved the majority of Montreal's staff to EA Motive and relocated key members to Edmonton, where they would work on Project Dylan, a game that intends to be the Bob Dylan of video games.
Oh, Bob Dylan of video games, well,
that sounds interesting.
Well, I just can't believe that there's so much has gone wrong in one project. I mean, games development can be insanely complicated in the best of scenarios, so when you've got this many people, this much money behind it, it shows that just pouring resources into something isn't going to make it good. You know, the way that Ubisoft developed I don't know, just kicking Ubisoft again, but it's true.
It stinks of Ubisoft, doesn't it? Like a huge corporation with different wings.
Yeah, I mean, Ubisoft, to my mind, are the most famous for having multiple groups of people in different parts of the world working on the same project, and the result being not very good. This is what's happened here, clearly, but there's just been other factors as well, like the engine not panning out the way they expected, the lack of real leadership, the fact that you had 2 studios who were kind of at odds with each other, trying to make the game. You know, it's not a very good place to be when you're making a game like Mass Effect. Mass Effect Andromeda 2, if that ever happens, if any other Andromeda game will ever happen, you know, it needs to be a lot better than Andromeda was. They set the bar really high for sci-fi RPGs with Mass Effect 2 in particular. You know, this is just not good enough, really.
I think what sticks out most for me in this story is the lack of a project manager with a clear vision and ultimate responsibility, like somebody who takes the reins and it doesn't have to answer to anybody. They didn't have that for years before, you know, for the first maybe 3 years of production. They didn't have somebody who called all the shots and made all the decisions and was seeing through the vision like they wanted it to.
Someone like Bob Dylan.
It makes you wonder whether they could have saved it, and if they'd have pushed the deadline date back a few years, maybe they could have like rejigged some things, and alright, they'd have been late, but like, you know, you think games that had spent 10 years in development because of these types of crises.
It's development hell, isn't it? But it's the decision that you take, and then when they had 18 months left, but maybe it would have been better to just start again that 18 months ago rather than just keep going with what they had.
And end up with the lowest Metacritic score of any Bioware game ever. Is this the fucking title show? Wow. Fuck me, it's big enough already.
Time to take a look at the Bob Dylan of comment sections. Let's take a look at some of your comments.
First up on the COD Zombies video, awesome winter comments. Mike got fired because of the tea and milk thing, right? He still does it wrong, doesn't he? God damn it, Mike.
No, I don't still do it wrong. I've learned
He's
my
learned his
lesson.
lesson, yeah.
I'm actually drinking tea myself now. I'm a changed man. Also commenting on the COD Zombies video, Tony Tornado says, Jake's anti-Christian t-shirt. Pretty Good Gaming have 100% satanistic intentions.
Well, that's obviously what you can take from the fact that Jake's wearing a t-shirt with some graphics on it that may or may not mean something, obviously, because this means that I'm a dragon rider and, you know, I love the Targaryens from Game of Thrones. Obviously, that's what this t-shirt means.
This means I'm a plain white guy.
Next up, Brandon Dasher comments, oh my gosh, Gareth is actually tall. I thought this was just a myth.
Tall is a relative idea, though, isn't it?
You motherfucker. The one time someone sticks up for me, Mike. Next up on our Microsoft E3 video, Bland Pepper comments, bloody classic Gareth, It's just a classic Gareth. He's in his natural argumentative state. I posed this question in the office. Is my natural state an argumentative state? I'd like to argue not.
Commenting on last week's Saturday show, Tall Glass of Cringe says, DLC is like paying for the sprinkles on an ice cream cone. You don't.
Exactly. Like, who pays for sprinkles? I don't pay for sprinkles.
Why would you?
Sprinkles are included in the price of the ice cream, so yeah. Last up on our Square Enix microtransactions video, Togskis says, gaming ain't what it used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like we need to end on like a positive note.
That's why it's funny though. That's why it's
funny. But like people think that's real. People think that's who we are.
So that's the story of Mass Effect Andromeda's terrible development period. Can you think of any other games that were treated terribly in their development? Let us know down in the comments. Remember to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There's another video right here if you want to watch that, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. See you next time.